recording now, just giving you a heads up. And we should be live and recording. All right. So once again, it's a pleasure to meet you. My daughter is in 9th grade and my son is in 5th grade. These are some pictures of us in Oregon last summer. So we got to go out to Bend, Oregon. Fortunately or unfortunately, my sister-in-law moved out there about a year ago. So it was cool to get to go out there and experience that. But those of you with siblings, you can imagine my wife wasn't the happiest that she ended up losing her sister to Oregon. And even though we do get to see her virtually a lot, probably now more than ever in these times where we're stuck at home, you know, it is a great experience to get out there. I love doing all things outdoors. So there's a lot of different things, including triathlons. Things like that. So moving into what you can expect from this session, really the goal and the learning targets are to identify the different geo tools available in specific in Google Earth and how you can apply those into the lessons. So I'm going to try to throw some ideas out there, but also leverage you for ideas that as we look at something in Google Earth, how you can experience that. So most of us are probably have some experience with Google Earth, or at least understand what Google Earth is. There is some things to keep in mind with Google Earth. It is completely web-based now for a lot of different things. There are some features that are not web-based, and I'm not going to focus on any of those today. I wanted this to be as opportune for any student, no matter what device they're on. So the things we talk about today will pretty much all be available on either the web-based version, on the phone, or on a tablet. Phone and tablet, you would obviously need to download the Google Earth app. Web-based, you can just go to googleearth.com. I also am going to provide little times today that as we do go through some things that you can pop in, experiment, and just kind of look around and see what's there and what's available for you in your class. And I'll get in a minute here, kind of get an idea of what your subjects are, what grade levels you're working with, just so we can use that as a reference as we're going through. So again, Google Earth allows us to explore the Earth, and there's a lot of new aspects to Google Earth that have been released, including some creation tools, which will be a follow-up session next Friday. So as we're going through here, if you're looking at something like, that's really cool, I wish I could create that or have my kids create that, or create something for my kids on Google Earth, next Friday we have a follow-up section at 10 o'clock. All about the creation aspects of Google Earth. So this week today is kind of more about the consumption and how we can use it for just consuming information and seeing different things within Google Earth. So at this moment, if you haven't, go ahead and click on Google Earth, or if you're on a different device, maybe open up the Google Earth app on a separate device that you can kind of bounce back and forth. But first off, just kind of navigating. There are some different shortcuts. But as I go into Google Earth, depending on what type of device I'm in, I can click and drag. I'm touchscreen Chromebook, so this is allowing me to kind of click and drag around. I have my zoom in and zoom out at the bottom, some other navigations here, but just take a second to kind of explore around using your navigations as you go through. I'm also going to turn my video off for a second because I just got yelled at for high computer usage, because Google Earth is kind of a hog when it comes to that. So feel free to give me some feedback if voice gets messed up, or if you lose me at all as far as what's going on. If you were looking for some of those shortcuts as you're messing around, the arrows become very beneficial because you can move left, move right, move up and down. And then as you do things like combine it with the shift key or the control key, it gives you the ability to rotate in different ways, tilt the Earth up and down, and then see different perspectives. So looking at some additional settings as well, on Google Earth in the top left-hand corner, once you're on the web-based version, there'll be 3 lines that gives you some different settings. And if I jump over to Google Earth here, I can show you where this is at. First off, you can turn on photos. So if you turn on photos, these are different photos, that 360-degree photos that people have taken around the world. Notice it does throw the bubbles up over top, so it can be a little bit distracting, but in different opportunities, you may want to have a a high resolution 360-degree photo or different photos that people had posted from that area. These are kind of vetted through artificial intelligence. However, they are crowdsourced, so these are different photos that people have taken and uploaded into Google's data sets to be seen. Anytime you click on one of those, you can click the arrow on the top left to kind of jump back. I'm just going to turn those back off for now so they're not too distracting. The other thing is the settings. So if you are struggling with internet speeds, some of these settings can help with that, or depending on how old of a device you're using. Things like flying animation, if you slow those down, turning off flying animation altogether, although it's not as fun that it kind of floats over the earth to a different location, you can turn that off, or encourage students to turn it off if there's someone who may be struggling with different internet speeds. Coming down through, there's also some memory cache sizes. So, if you drop this down, it's going to also load faster. You just won't see as much until it loads. So I should say it loads a little bit slower. You're just going to get to a place faster, and it's not going to bog down your computer as much. So just knowing those settings that are there are good. Hopefully most of us are fortunate enough that we're on a half-decent device with half-decent speed, and we can kind of use it to its degree. Keep in mind, though, if we ever are back in the classroom and you're in a classroom that struggles with internet speeds, Google Earth can be very bandwidth heavy and be a big consumption hog. So if you have every single kid hitting Google Earth at one time, you may definitely notice some speeds. So keep that in mind as you're going through, especially with the web-based version as we go. So looking at a couple other settings, and you might have seen some of these on the bottom right-hand corner, you can fly to your location. So you will need to allow your location. But one of the things we talk about a lot, or I talk about with my teachers a lot, is if you've ever done a Google Earth activity with your students, one of the biggest things you have to do first is let them search for their house. And then after they search for their house, you got to probably let them search for a friend's house. And then they're probably going to search for the school. And then once they've done all of that, you will finally have the ability to kind of pull them back in and get them down to some educational aspects. Obviously, during this time of learning from home, they're just going to kind of go off and do their own thing as far as flying around the earth, looking for different places before they get into an activity that you may have asked them to work through. Looking down on that bottom right-hand corner, you do have the ability to go into your street view. So if you want to walk around the streets once you get to a location, just like you would in Google Maps, you can click on Pigman and drop into Street View and walk around the different streets. You also have the ability to go into 2D or 3D to see the buildings. 3D does render a lot slower just because of the three-dimensional aspects of it. But depending on your learning goals or outcomes with your students, you may want to have them be in 2D or 3D. Next, you can orient to north. So anytime you're in a specific location, if you click on the compass icon, it will orient to north. You can also quickly jump around the earth by spinning the map on the bottom corner. So although you can do it on top, you can also spin it on the bottom right and spin the globe and get to a location really quickly. Finally, you can zoom in and zoom out without using the shortcuts, but just kind of using those icons as we go. So those are some really quick navigations. I want to do a little activity here just to kind of get you going. Probably about 3 years ago, they added a dice or a die to Google Earth. I'm not sure if you've ever experienced this, but what we're going to do is a little activity. So I want you to go to Google Earth. I would like you to roll the die and see where you end up. So when I do this, it's going to give me a random location on Earth. From that random location on Earth, I want you to think about, all right, what did I see? How did I get there? And then maybe how I could use that in class. So once you think about that, you can click Add to Padlet on the bottom of this slide, which will take you out to the Padlet board. Just throw your name. It can just be first name, what grade level you teach, and then some way that you feel like you could use this in class. All right. So just to clarify that one more time, and if you have questions, feel free to jump in and throw them on the chat. You're going to go to Google Earth. You're going to roll the dice. You're going to see where you end up. You're going to add that location to the Padlet by clicking on the link. And you're going to add your name, your grade level, where you ended up, and how you might be able to use something like that in your class, no matter what subject area you're teaching. So I'm just going to give you about 2 more minutes to finish that up, if you would like to finish up that aspect. All right, about 30 seconds to finish up wherever you may be at. Nicole, we're on the same wavelength there. Yep. Someone from Nashville, same thing. All right, great. So as we come back together, some great ideas on there that we start to see. So obviously geography becomes a huge thing. ELA was kind of the one I threw on there, as well as some things that some other people are throwing on there. So just going through and finding those different things. The other thing I think that's important to think about is as we try to create background information or empathy in students, or just like an understanding of the world in general and how large it is. Something as simple as the dice can play a huge part into different aspects of them learning about different cultures, different areas, a lot of those different items on there. So feel free to continue to add to the Padlet or double check it for different ideas, and continue to think about any of these tools we look at in Google Earth, how you could use them for your class, no matter what subject area you're in. So I'm going to jump back and continue through the slides. So we looked at the dice. When you rolled the die, and got to a certain spot, you might have noticed that a knowledge card popped up. So knowledge cards are somewhat new in Google Earth. They've only been there for a couple months now. But these knowledge cards will allow you to find out more information about a particular area. So I noticed there were a bunch of people from out of the area. So one of the big things in Reading that stand out, which is kind of ironic, is the pagoda. And the pagoda is located at the top of the highest peak in the Reading area. And if you notice, one of the searches I did in Google Earth was for the pagoda. When you do that, and any time that knowledge card pops up, if you click on the knowledge card, it'll actually bounce you out to a page that gives you information about that particular area. So these knowledge cards can be beneficial for students to learn more information about different areas, whether they be rolling a die or whether you have them searching a specific area. It could be a location that you want them to search and actually give them, or it could be something that they randomly go find through a project-based learning activity or a different aspect. So once you click on one of those knowledge cards, and once I get caught up here with speed, it will open up additional information. So here's our Poet knowledge card. As I come down through, it talks about when it was created, what it was created for, and different aspects that people have added about it. Also gives some different aerials, and then any information they may have about it. So for example, the pagoda is still open, so it does give you some information about that as you go through. So as you're going through Google Earth, keep an eye out for those knowledge cards. There are some areas that have it that you can check out more information about that particular topic. Continuing down through, you have the ability to search in Google Earth, and this search option has become a lot more robust. So you'll notice some different things here that pop out as I search Google Earth. So originally, you could always search for places. So anytime you wanted to search for a location on Google Earth, you could do that. But they've now added a couple other things. One of those is voyages, which we'll talk about in a little bit. There's also data layers. So Google Earth is basically a huge data set of locations from around the world and information about those locations and different aspects of it. So when you do a search, sometimes you'll see data layers of different areas. So in this example, I searched for China, and there were obviously places, but then there were also some data layers of different data sets that were shared out about China. And then there's guided tours as well, guided or walking tours available as well. So if you see those pop up in a search, you can click on them and it'll actually let you go through a guided tour that was created. This is very similar to a voyage, which, as I said, we'll look at in a couple of minutes as well. Going down through some of the different options that are there as well, this whole bar on the left that you'll notice, I mean, we have our search, which we just talked about, and then as we come down through, second from the bottom are different map styles. So you do have like 3 main map styles that are there. Another thing that can help with the speed of Google Earth, I'm just going to pop back to Google Earth just for a second so you can see it in action. So down here at the bottom where I click on map styles, I have exploration, which gives me kind of those borders, labels, roads, different things that provide more information to it. It also gives me the different options. If I click on clean, this is completely pretty much washed out, so there's not a lot of different information on there. It's more of, more of just that clean view of what the Earth looks like. And as I zoom out, I won't really see a lot of those different areas blocked off as far as states and borders and lines. Coming down, I have everything, which will fill it with every single thing you can think of, including transit lines, water areas, different landmarks, and you'll see it becomes a lot more populated with that everything. Keeping in mind, looking at speed, clean to everything is going to give you a lot of different things. Depending on what your learning aspects are, you can go into custom and you can kind of pick and choose what you want. So this is everything checked, but if I wanted to remove some things, like I didn't want places, I didn't want roads, but I did want clouds on, I can uncheck and keep different things that I would like. Looking down below, I do have layers that I can turn on. First is 3D buildings. So once I'm down low enough, if I want to see those buildings in 3 dimension, I can do that. Otherwise, if I just want that aerial view, I can leave 3D off and just leave it in 2D so that I am only viewing that aerial view from above, kind of how Google Earth was from its origination. I can have animated clouds on. You'll notice it does say in the last 24 hours. So pretty cool that kids can kind of get a perspective of where clouds are from that aerial view and how they're the patterns that are traveling across the globe for that. And then grid lines. So if I want to see those latitude and longitude lines, I can turn on grid lines from my view so that I'm able to see those different aspects as we go through. So again, all that's on the slide, so feel free to reference back to these at any point in time as you go through. There is a ruler on the bottom, so you can start to measure how far you are. So you can start to see where this could be pulled in for other subject areas as we start to measure distances and kind of plan out different trips that we may want to do right over top of Google Earth. So the ruler on the bottom left-hand corner will allow us to plot different places and give us the miles. It's also so interesting to me, especially when I'm working with some upper level elementary grade levels, how often the kids are confused by why the line is curved when they use the ruler on Google Earth. So it becomes a great talking point, when we're talking about latitude and longitude and the Earth being round and some of those different things, and them not really understanding right away why, when they're using that ruler to measure distances, the line becomes curved. So I mentioned Voyagers before, and this is kind of one of the best places to find field trips for your students, and we'll spend a little bit of time digging in here. But Voyager was created as pre-created field trips for students or you to use and learn more information about different areas. As I jump back to Google Earth, I'm going to slide over and click on the Voyages aspect. So you remember before I said I could search for them? We'll start here first though, and kind of get an idea of the voyages that are out there. So when I pull this up, there's a whole bunch of different information and different voyages that are available. So museums around the world, Earth view, and then even back on slide, I linked out to, sorry, wrong slide, some different ones that are available. And we can search and find different things, as I mentioned before. When you click on one of these voyages, so if I click on Discover Egypt, it's going to take me to this pre-created trip that goes through a bunch of different information about Egypt. So you'll notice on the right, I have a card, and it's into different information. So as I click on these different items, it'll actually take me in and give me more information about it. I can scroll through it or go to there's all different things embedded into these cards. And as I go through, so this is taking me to the Citadel. All right, and continuing through these different locations. All of these are live views, and you'll notice now that I'm in Street View. So at any time, if I wanted to zoom out or go back into my different views, I could start to do that even from Voyager and then continue through. As I mentioned earlier, you can start to search. So you mentioned Oregon Trail earlier, and then anybody know the other most popular game as far as geography goes when you were a kid, maybe even foreign language? So how many people also remember where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? So there's actually a Voyager for where in the world is Carmen Sandiego. So if you remember playing this as a kid like I do, I click Begin the Chase. This is actually a pre-created trip over top of Google Earth. So welcome to Acme. As we go through, it's going to almost be exactly like the game was, where it's going to start to give us context clues to try to figure out where she was or catch up to her as she traveled around. So you might remember this if you played the game before. So we're going to use the magnifying glass, interview witnesses, gives us different information, fly around, and then it's going to start to ask us and give us those clues of where we want to go. So again, that's the different Voyagers that are out there. There's a ton out there. I can either click on the Voyager option and scroll through and look, use the categories at the top. I'd love to see better search functionality in here. It's not there yet. But if I do use the magnifying glass to search on here, I can start to search for different options. So maybe I want to look for stopping the spread of Zika, because I want to tie different pandemics together with what we're dealing with now with my students. So when I search for Zika, there is a Voyager that I knew about called Stopping the Spread of Zika. And then as you start to explore, it talks about different strategies different areas around the world have used to control the spread of Zika and mosquitoes. So pretty cool aspect there. I'm going to take a little break here for you to dig into Voyagers a little bit and look around and see if there's anything you can find. So once again, if you're looking for one of those, you can either click on Voyager on the left and just scroll through and look at the different aspects, or I can go to the magnifying glass and search for a topic. And as I'm searching, different categories that pop up underneath it, it'll start to say, you know, what type of thing is it. So if it's a Voyager under guided tours, it'll start to say that it's a Voyager. So once again, take maybe 3-4 minutes to kind of explore around a little bit, check out the Voyagers that are out there, see if there's anything you can find that would tie to your curriculum area. Welcome, Joseph. This is the link if you didn't see it in the chat by scrolling up. It's just tinyurl.com/earthtrips, and that's that slide deck if you would like to go to that to check it out. Iconic bookstores. Very cool, Steve. One-minute warning. I agree, Candace. That's a pretty cool one. Hopefully soon we'll be able to hike them as well. Welcome, whoever just dinged in. Feel free to scroll up in the chat or go to tinyurl.com/earthtrips for the slide deck. All right, so I probably have lost you forever, but that's your freedom of jumping around voyages in a session like this if you want. But looking at a couple other options in Google Earth, and as I mentioned earlier, Google Earth becomes this huge data set of items. And without getting too geeky, basically, like everything else, there's a programming language behind Google Earth. So Google Earth items are created using KML or KMZ files. So just like a lot of websites are HTML files, you have this programming language of KML and KMZ that's used to create maps over top of Google Earth. So with Google Earth, those data sets are free, and there is an Earth Engine API that can be used for all kinds of crazy things when it comes to programming. The big thing I want you to understand about this is there are ways of pulling items into Google Earth using KML or KMZ files. Within the last year, this has gotten a lot more streamlined. So going back a couple of years ago, it was a lot more complicated to get the KML files and download them and upload them and do all those different things. But it has really gotten a lot easier to do that now. So on this slide, it kind of gives you a breakdown of what you would do to pull in a KML or a KMZ file. So if you're ever researching projects online and someone recommends a project and they're like, you need this KML file to open up in Google Earth, this is kind of what they're talking about and what would occur. So you'll notice the screenshots on the left shows you where the projects option is. And then it gives you the ability to import from Drive or your computer a KML or a KMZ file. On the right is what will happen once you pull one of those in. And we'll do this in a minute live so you can kind of see, but I wanted to give you a breakdown of some project areas that may be beneficial for you and how you would then use that to pull in. So from here, one that I came across that I really love is called realworldmath.org. So I know a lot of times we always look for ways to use math in class and ways we can tie math to the real world. I know as a student, that was always something that was pressing for me is, well, why do I use this? What is the point of math in the real world? And I think we still get that question a lot. This also ties into science really well. So this is a collection of projects. One that I pulled out that I kind of liked was the Typhoon project. So there's a project-based learning activity that if you click on will link out to the real world math website. And once you get there, it'll give you a KML file that you would use, as well as a lesson plan, some objectives and different items that tie along with the real world math project. So you'll notice right away the objectives are they're going to create an interactive graph of a historical event. They want to use spreadsheet data to chart and annotate coordinate positions with speed, date, and time, looking at expressing time in a 24-hour clock format, and measure and annotate distance. As we look down through on the left, it does give you some student worksheets, teacher notes to help you kind of go through this. And then this is just one of many. So if you go to the top under teachers and lessons, it breaks it down by, what are these different projects? What am I looking to accomplish? So if I look at concepts, it has all these different things. So if I was about to teach about estimation, I could click on estimations and look at a project for estimations. It also has project-based lessons. So if I come down through here, this is where I found that Typhoon one. There's also one on U-boats, water problems, SAR. So all these different aspects that are available, all of them are tied to Google Earth. So as you look at this lesson, it has that KMZ download. So as I mentioned before, and the reason I've talked about it ahead of time was that you see, all right, I have to download this KMZ file. So if I wanted to use this Typhoon project, I would download the KMZ file and then maybe push it to my students using Google Earth, and then get it onto Google Earth to complete that project. So this is one example, more from a math and science standpoint. And then if we go to the next slide, there's something called Google Lit Trips. Some of you might be familiar with these from before, but Google Lit Trips are designed around books. So you follow characters through books, and they have all different ones on there. So if I click on the Google Lit Trips link, it'll take me out to that website where I can kind of dig in and look at what's available. Now, every single book is obviously not on here, but as I go down through, I can kind of look at titles. So we have K to 5, we have 9 to 12. So if I jump into maybe K to 5, and I'm going to start the book with Make Way for Duckling, I could scroll down and look, and I'm almost positive, yep, they have Make Way for Duckling as an option. The process on here, which is a little different than the real world math problems is you have to come over and request a lit trip. This is pretty seamless. So when you get here, you're going to request a trip. You're just going to type your email in. You're going to pick the title you want. And then, or I could suggest a new title, and then you're going to click request lit trip. So as soon as this happens, typically I would get an email. Then I'm kind of looking at my phone to see if it came through yet. Usually the email comes within a minute or so. So obviously don't wait till right before class. But if I go to my mail, fingers and toes crossed, Candace. Let it load. And we'll pop back in here in a minute and see. But the other one we mentioned was the Typhoon project. So if I jump back out to that Typhoon project, I did download this already to my computer, or I could just click on KML download and download it. And since I'm on a Chromebook, it goes right to my files menu. And then when I hop back out to Google Earth, I had that slide for it, but you remember I mentioned I would go to projects, and then from here, I can import a new project. So if I go to new project, I can import the KML file from Google Drive or from my computer. I did already pull that site Super Typhoon one in. So when I click on this, it's going to open up that project, and then you'll notice that it has preset lines following this Typhoon as it went through. So by date, by different areas, it shows you where it started, how it progressed, across the ocean, and then at different timings when it hit different areas. So this really looked at, that data set and charting that different information as you go through. So that's an example of grabbing that KMZ file, downloading it, and pulling it into Google Earth so that you could use those different maps. All right. And it looks like lit trips is going to make me look like a liar and not pop up within a minute, but we may come back and check or know that it will come up. There it is. So here's that requested Google lit trip, make way for duckling. I get here, I want to download this file or just share it right to my drive. One, but that is my process. Once I download it, I can go and import it in, just like I was shown with the Typhoon project as well. And then to make way for duckling, walk through Boston from the different monuments, just like the book does, and has some photos and videos popped in there to kind of show the trip that duckling made through that book. So cool ways of pulling in different projects, giving kids different experiences using Google Earth and those KMZ files. As I continue through, I mentioned earlier the Earth Engine. So all of this data is available. And if you click on Earth Engine, it has lots of different lesson ideas that you can check out, as well as one like time lapse, which becomes popular as well. So over top of Google Earth, these data sets combine to show how different things may have happened. So we're looking at the glacier retreat in Alaska, because you want your students to kind of understand what's going on with glaciers around the world. You'll notice that as I watch this image and the dates at the bottom, you can see from 1984 till now how much the glacier has retreated and how much ice has been lost off of that glacier. So those time lapse create great opportunities to have conversations with students or to kind of get that hook started and possibly lead into a project-based learning activity or something else about a topic you are looking to cover. So that's Earth Engine and the different aspects with that. As I continue down through, looking at Earth View, again, taking things over Google Earth and popping them out. So Google Earth View will take you out to a high-resolution photos that you can actually break down by color. So you'll notice different colors throughout. I have my link there, but Earth View. So if I was looking for a high resolution photo in a particular color, once I'm in Earth View, it will give me the option to break it down by color. Get away from here. Show map. And now I have my color area, so as I toggle it, if I wanted something in that magenta color or red, and I was looking for an image of an area that had that red in it, I can get right to the area that has it. So again, just kind of using the die, except now we're using colors to jump around and see some different areas as we go. Going a little further, GE Teach allows me to compare those images from Google Earth side by side. So when I jump out to GE Teach, at the bottom I can select a map. So if I wanted to look at the comparison of land temperature and population, on the left I could select land temperature, and on the right I could go to select map, and then maybe go to human geography, population density. So you'll notice on the right I have my population density, and as I scroll in, I can see even closer in the comparison between those different things. So a great way to have your students analyzing different categories over top of maps as we go through. A couple other things, a lot of this is used in Project Sunroof as well. So using Google Earth imagery, you can check on solar energy, and Tesla kind of jumped on this as well. So if you're doing any projects about renewable resources with your students and the cost to benefit ratio, you can jump out to Project Sunroof, search for a location. Not all locations in the world are there yet, but there are a bunch that are there, and students can kind of analyze what would be my savings if I were to put solar energy or solar panels on top of my roof. It's also good for you if you're looking to put solar panel roofs on, because it gives you a great breakdown of how much you would save over a 20-year period by putting on those solar panels. Speak to Go is a newer thing, so this is designed for students on a phone to be able to go into VR mode and put it into Google Cardboard or just on their phone and just hit a microphone and say where they want to go, and then Google Earth will take them to that location. So that's something that you can check out when you have time, as well as Google Sky and Moon and Mars. So different imagery from the satellite imageries that we've received that students can kind of explore and see some of those different areas. Finally, this is kind of the creme de la creme, but not something that you'll be able to jump to super quick, because it only works with an Oculus Rift or an HTC Vive. But Earth VR was created as a way, it's a lot like Soarin', if you're familiar with Soarin' from Disney, but it allows you to fly around the world. Again, you would need to have one of these two headsets, which throws you into the $1,000 range. So not very equitable for our students, but if it is something that's available, in a library, once we're back face to face, we'll be able to jump in and see some of those different things. Thank you, Jessica, for throwing the slide link on there. Finally, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. I did throw a couple additional resources on here, like Earth Outreach, which talks about all of those different things. The Google Geo team is absolutely amazing. Feel free to check them out on Twitter or online, but they are constantly working to create better things through geography, whether it be for geography classes or any class, and are always up for helpful hints. So feel free to provide feedback by anywhere you see a question mark providing feedback. Also, this Earth Ed Experts is a pretty cool group, our website, that has a ton of different videos on a lot of the stuff we just talked about. So if you want to go back and see a different video on how to do some of these or even more items, there is a ton of information on there. Feel free to reach out moving forward if you have if you have any specific questions, or if you use it in some way and want to share, feel free to share it with me on Twitter, share it with me on email, and reach out whenever you desire. I'll throw that link on there again, but I thought that, there's the full link to the slideshow itself. So if you don't have any questions, I hope you have a wonderful day. If you do, feel free to stick around. I am going to stop recording now.